Kia ora, be Manley tōku ingoa. My name is Ben Manley. My role within council is Te Pukenga Rangahau. I'm the researcher for council on certain issues, historical issues and land issues. So this land, the block that this particular building sits on, it has a few names. One is Rotorua, which is the name of this land area running from the Puarenga stream all the way to the Utahina stream. This particular section of it is called Kopana Whakarua. But Kopana essentially can be to sort things out. Whakarua is actually a directional name. It actually means to the northeast of something. What it was used for, they would use it for things like kumara. There was a few cultivations in this particular area running from this building all the way across to the library, actually taking up where the court is today. When rewharewha, a plague once came through here back in the old days and a lot of people passed away at Ohuramutu and Ngāpuna, they stopped cultivating directly in this particular area. Also there was a sacred site nearby because we're quite close to a battlefield called Tawhara Kurupeti, so they didn't quite often use this area after that. So this particular piece of land was actually gifted, and so the gifting goes all the way back to 1880 when a Crown agent who was a judge of the Native Land Court, Judge Fenton, actually came over to Rotorua and to sat down with the three iwi who had interest here. So that was Ngāti Rangi Wewihi, Ngāti Whakawe, Ngāti Winaku Kōpaki. And so in 1880 in November they met down at Ohuramutu and they had a conversation, and essentially Fenton was advocating for the creation of a new township in this area to help with the growing issues with land and growing issues to do with tourism as the new tourists were coming through. They hashed out a deal. That deal we call today the Fenton Agreement, and essentially the deal was the iwi will provide some land. That land would be leased on their behalf by the Crown, who would look after that land for them. As part of that deal, there were certain reserves that were gifted across, that were passed across to the Crown for the benefit of all the people that will be involved in this township. So this particular block is one of those that was gifted by those particular iwi as an endowment almost for the new township. So this block, Manley Government Gardens in Kupedo Park. This one in particular was set aside to be almost a town square. The buildings would be up around it, and there'd be like a civic kind of area in the middle of it. So that's what the idea was for this land originally. So from the beginning of the town in the 1880s, this was blank pretty much. They had some trees and they had a fountain set up in 1887 that was bringing water in, but it was essentially set aside as parkland. The idea to actually put a building here kind of came up originally in the 1920s and again in the late 1930s, especially because the borough council at the time wanted a place where they could house themselves instead of being spread all over the place. So in 1939, I think it was, they started looking at this land and building on this land, and that's where the original convention centre, the old civic or municipal building, there's all sorts of names that people have given over the years, the Regent Theatre, was built over here.